let's launch in. I just want to tell you that, Rick and Patty have been for our family just anchors in so many ways. Patty's taught our kids. I say to, I don't know if I've said it to you lately, Patty. Patty kind of saved Noah's life in school. His kindergarten year was pretty darn rough, and he had Patty for a first grade teacher, and it really was. We were so grateful. So we've spent a lot of time with Rick and Patty. Their family has meant a lot to us. Most of their kids, all three of the girls, were interns at Moses Lake Christian Church, which was just tons of fun. And Samantha's looking for a place to go this summer, so I'm angling to try to get Samantha to come and work for us this summer. So we'll see if that happens. But we've had a lot of journey with Rick and Patty. When I think about Rick, I just want to say that I think of Rick as one of the key mentors for me in my adult life. Rick and Patty came to Moses Lake Christian Church pretty quickly after we came, and Rick's just been a close friend. I had my office in his building for a while, which was good because I have an accounting personality, so I fit in well there. And it was really, it was a lot of fun. And so they've been really important people in our lives. So I'm really grateful, Rick, that you're taking the time. Patty, it's nice to see you. Looks like Nathan's going to join us, which is awesome. Hey, Nate, how are you?
This is my son.
This
is my son in whom I'm well pleased.
Nathan, is that lad somewhere around? Or is he in bed?
He's in bed for a couple hours now. It's 9 here.
Oh, that's right. Kind of like to see that guy up close sometime.
Yeah. He's fun. Fun age
nice
too.
To see you, Nathan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of my journey with the Honsowetz family, my journey with Rick. I have a lot of respect for Rick, and he's been a very dear friend and someone I seek out anytime I have any decision to make that matters more than what I'm going to have for dinner. So Rick, thanks for taking the time for this, and we'll just start and go through it. Really wanted to start with just Rick, a bit of your background and kind of your history with our church and whatever you want to say as intro.
Okay, thanks, John. As Clyde Cook used to say, that's a lot of gravy for such a small potato.
Yeah, I've heard you say that a lot of times.
Amish.
I thought I'd just spend a couple of minutes on my background this way. I was reading a few weeks ago something by Peter Kraft, and he said, the four most important choices you've made in your life are the ones that made the biggest difference in your life. And he suggested those are a God to believe in, a mate to marry, friends to be with, and a career to work at. Those four things make the most difference in our lives. So I'll start with a God to believe in. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior in November of 1981. I was almost 30. And Patty actually became a Jesus follower before that and led me to the Lord. That's one of about 10,000 things she's done for me, which I'm very grateful for. So I think, John, we met you in Charlotte the fall before Jonathan was born. I think that must have been maybe 28 or 29 years ago.
Yeah.
And we got involved in Moses Lake Christian Church shortly after that. And of course, Patty's just got a calling for children. And so her involvement included mostly teaching Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights and Christmas programs and Easter programs and any outreach to children. I was more involved on the financial side. I've been elder for many years and treasurer for many years, and we raised our 4 children in the church. And I don't know how people do it I don't know how people raise their children outside the church. We just had that community of believers, people that really loved our children and helped us raise our kids. So a mate to marry, that's my dear wife. We got married in November of 1974, and Patty was teaching school in Ephrata, and I was unemployed. when we got married, and worked at a few temporary jobs for a while. Melissa was born in March of 1976. You're going to correct me, aren't you, Patty, when I do something this wrong? By the time Melissa was born, I had found my sort of forever job. I had found a job with a CPA firm that I ended up staying with for almost 40 years. You know, Patty and I are just like most married couples, are quite different. She fills my gaps. I really married up, that's for sure. So she's been very patient. Can you imagine being married to an accountant for 46 years? Pretty amazing. Anyway, we raised 4 children, had 14 years of teenagers, which is something. 17 years of college, which somehow we prayed through and paid for. All our kids ended up graduating on time and successfully. We're thankful for that. We had 4 wonderful weddings, 3 amazing sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, son-in-law, and one incredible daughter-in-law. All are believers, and we're just receiving our 15th grandchild. So we are really blessed. So Patty and I have managed our way through a lot of seasons of life, a lot of financial, I guess, minefields. And so now we're in a new season of life, and we're discovering, you know, a different season of life. And here we are in Moses Lake. Friends to be with. You know, we've been in this community now for almost 46 years. So we have the advantage of just having a lot of just some long-term relationships that we're just so thankful for. John, you recommended a book to me a few weeks ago. It was Jordan Peterson. I think it's called The 12 Rules of Life. And one of those chapters is called one of the 12 rules, rule number 3, make friends with people who want the best for you. You know, that's been huge for us. It's made all the difference. You've taught many times that we are to live our Christian life in community and not isolated and alone. Unfortunately, these last 10 months have been isolated and alone, haven't they? It's been so difficult, but it's just been an incredible blessing for us to be. We didn't intend to be in Moses Lake that long, but here we are 45 or 46 years later, and we have the friends we've had, the community that we've lived in have just been incredible. Proverbs 13:20, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And we've just been surrounded by wise people who have helped us raise our kids and manage our finances and have a stronger marriage, a lot of role models. So that's very, very thankful for that. And finally, a career to work at. You won't like my artwork, but I'm going to hold this up. Can you see that? Maybe not so much. So this is a three circles. It wouldn't it be great if we were all working at jobs where we had a passion for the work we do, we had the gifts and talents to do the work, and the job provided the kind of financial rewards that we need to feed our families and make a life. And as I said before, Patty's passion has always been children. So she's taught school, and she's been involved with kids' lives through church. She's now a child advocate for orphans in the foster system. Her life has been filled with ministry to children. I've been on the financial side as a CPA. You know, I've had a front row seat to hundreds of families over the last 45 years, observing their finances and being involved with the family's finances. And then, of course, Patty and I have our own personal experience walking through life together, raising children and so on. So if I bring anything to this topic, I think it's because of my work experience, but also because of our personal experience. So anyway, that's kind of a background on us. And my hope tonight is just that maybe for those of you that feel like you're doing okay with your finances, that maybe there'll be some things that maybe you can tweak, or maybe some nuggets you can walk away with that can be helpful. And for others that are, you know, maybe a little bit more struggling, you know, I just hope that you can find some things out of this conversation that can get on a path that will lead to a little bit more margin maybe in your life. So that's my hope tonight. Yeah, that's it.
That's great, Rick. You know, one of the things that we've tried to talk about over the years at Moses Lake Christian Church is that there are principles of the kingdom that are significant, and they work whether you're a church person or you're not a church person. There are some principles that God has maybe opened the door to, and I just kind of want to go there next, which is, what are some of the principles? Why is money and personal family finance such an important topic for families within the church, within the kingdom? Why does it matter?
Remember Zig Ziglar, John? He's passed away now. He's a speaker, motivational speaker, and I found that he said on the got to have it scale, money is right below oxygen. And I think there's something to that. The statistics tell us that about 70% of the families are within the church and outside the church they're living paycheck to paycheck, and it's very little margin in their lives financially, and that's stressful. It's difficult. We've all gone through those paycheck to paycheck seasons. We'd like to have a way to work through that, of course, but people get there for different reasons. But it's important. You probably found this, John, in your counseling, but it can be a huge tension in marriages. I think this is true. You tell me if I'm right. I think financial problems, financial issues are listed as a cause of divorce in the overwhelming majorities of marital breakups. Is that consistent?
Yep, top three.
Do you find in your counseling that finances are a big issue?
Yeah, they really are, Rick. And Charlotte and I walk out that journey too together. So we're in a different place today than we were 25 years ago. But yeah, absolutely key. It's a key issue, and it's really challenging sometimes to be able to talk about that and walk through that.
Yeah. It's just, even if you never get to the point of marriage breakup, obviously it can be a source of tension. Real tensions. We're wired differently, and we come at it differently, and so anyway, I think it's important because of the whole marital tension that can come out of finances. I think it's important because whether you realize it or not, your children's attitudes and behaviors about money are determined to a great extent in your home. And we all kind of have to look at the mirror and say, okay, what am I teaching my kids through our behavior related to money? If they're seeing a lot of credit cards being used, if they're seeing a lot of tension in the home, if they're seeing maybe a lot of complaining about your work, buying a lot of lottery tickets to try to get rich quick, get out of the hole. It leaves an impression. On the other side, if there's a lot of teaching going on, a lot of compatible discussions going on, agreements about the financial future, the opposite can be true too. But you are teaching your kids, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why family finances are really important. I know, looking back, I think my own memories, there was a lot of tension in my household when I was being raised about over money. A lot of tension, difficult. It was a difficult time, and I think it definitely shaped my perception of money, even to this day. So, but I think the most important reason why it's important, John, is because God seems to think it's important. I think Jesus talked about money more than he talked about heaven. Pretty important stuff. So I've written down here, the Bible talks about money because God loves us. He doesn't want it to harm us. Rather, he wants it as a tool to bless our family, bless others, and fund the advance of his kingdom. So if it's important to God, it needs to be important to us. So I was listening a few weeks ago, John, to a lecture or a sermon by Andy Stanley. Mm-hmm. And I wrote some things down that he said that I wanted to say. He said, what if money could talk? If money could talk, it would say just about what Jesus said. And I'm going to give you some examples of what Andy Stanley was talking about. He said, if money could talk, it would say, I can add meaning to your life, but I am not the meaning of life. I'm a means to an end. And the end is not you.
Hmm.
Money has the potential to make an eternal difference. And a lot of people, we don't think about that so much, but money really does have the potential to make an eternal difference in terms of how you are using it. Example you are to your kids, how you're blessing others with it. It really does. It really is a tool, and I think it's powerful when you say that it can add meaning to your life, but it's not the meaning of life. It's not your master.
Hmm.
Also, if money could talk, it would say, "I'm a better servant than master," and your self-control determines which one of us is in control.
Hmm.
Most money problems begin with character, not income. It really is about our attitude towards money. We really do need to tell our money where to go. And I just love that picture of telling our money where to go. Okay, this month, this dollar, you're going to go up the street. There's a family whose husband is out of work. I'm sending this money this month to that family. Or I'm sending it to the PUD to pay the utilities on our home to keep my family comfortable, or to pay the mortgage this month, or to put food on the table, or to set aside for college, or set aside for retirement. What we tell our money what to do, it's our servant, not our master. To me, that's it's a powerful thought. Also, if money could talk, I'm easy to keep up with, but I'm really difficult to catch up with. We've probably all been in that situation where we get behind on things financially, and it's a lot easier to keep up than it is to catch up. I'm easy to track, but if you lose track of me, you will lose your peace of mind. We've all been in that situation, I suspect. There really is no excuse for not knowing where your money's going. There's really no excuse. I mean, the system, the technology we have, there's really no excuse for not knowing where your money's going. And finally, if money could talk, what you do with me says everything about who you are and whose you are. It's a humbling thought to me. But your money really is a reflection of who you are. Back when I was a young CPA, my boss would hand me a set of books of some family. Maybe we were doing tax work, or we might have been doing financial statements. Hard to know. But anyway, would give me the books that analyzed this family's finances. And it's amazing what I could find out about that. All I had was their financial records, but it's amazing what I would know about that family in just a couple of hours. I would know what they did for a living, how much they made, what they ate, where they vacationed, how many cars and boats they had, how much debt they had, where they went to church, whether they were generous or not, what their politics were, where they lived, indication of how much stress they were under. At that point in time in my career, I didn't get to meet these clients. I knew them pretty well. In fact, I suspect I probably knew them more in those 2 hours than if I'd have talked to them for 2 hours, because you can't fake your finances. It's a reflection of who we are. Remember, Larry Burkett used to say, if you were accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence in your checkbook to convict you? I think that's a powerful thought. So money's a tool, but it's a test. Money's a test in the sense that if we can't be faithful in the little things like managing and spending money, and God tells us that he won't put us in charge of bigger things. It's a test, but it's also a testimony, because how you spend your money is an outside indicator of what your spiritual condition. So anyway, I think it's important, and it's hard not to read the Bible and realize how important it is. You have any thoughts on that, John, or anybody else?
One of the things that comes to my mind, Rick, is something I've heard you say a lot of times, and I've said it to my sons a lot of times, is that you have to manage every dollar before you spend it, because you only get to spend it once. And I've learned a lot from you about that particularly, and now I do my monthly finances on a Excel spreadsheet. It's pretty much the only thing I understand how to do on an Excel spreadsheet, but there are so many ways to do it. Like you said, it's there's so many tools available to us now to be attentive to that issue, and that's really helpful.
Um,
Anyone else have a question before we move on to the next thing we want to talk about?
I don't think we have to convince people that money is important. Money is important.
Yeah.
But a lot of times as Christians, we, it seems like sometimes it's actually easier to accept salvation through the sacrifice of Jesus than it is to actually turn our money. That's an easier decision almost than turning our money over. There's something about money that we just, there's something about it. It's just hard to act like a steward all the time.
Yeah.
And not an owner.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a powerful thought. And I guess that kind of leads to the next question, which is what's it look like to be successful with money? I mean, we probably have all experienced at some level when we haven't been successful with it, but what does that even mean? And in the church, sometimes, the idea of success with money means that you're going to get rich and you're going to be, God's going to bless you. And if you give this, you'll get that. But what does it look like to be successful with finances and stewardship?
I think for a Christian family, I think success means honoring God with your money. And there's so much. The Bible is so just rich with I think you'd be like if you could apply all the wisdom in the Bible, you'd be like having a master's degree in finance. It's an amazing book. But so I think it's about honoring God with your money. Proverbs 3:9 says, "Honor the Lord with all your wealth." Okay, and I think of that around sort of 5 categories of spending. 5 categories of spending: giving and sharing, debt, taxes, savings, and lifestyle. Okay, these 5 categories. It's amazing to me, but the Bible describes everybody spends money in these 5 categories, and only these 5 categories. Doesn't matter if you're Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, John Roberts, doesn't matter. We all spend money in these 5 categories, and the Bible has so much to say about each of those categories. So I think success, just as you mentioned before, being successful financially is making really good choices among those 5 categories of spending. And as you say, when you spend it in one category, you can't spend it in another. When I've been counseling families over the years, usually if they have problems on the spending side, we call that defense, it's usually in lifestyle and debt. And if we're spending too much in those 2 categories, guess what? We don't have money left over for sharing and giving when people are in need or advance God's kingdom. And we certainly don't have enough money to save for the future because lifestyle and debt is consuming it all. And that's kind of our culture. So I think success with finances starts with your attitude, an attitude of stewardship and not ownership. Psalm 89:11, "Behold, to the Lord your God belong heaven and the highest heavens, the earth and all that it is in it." If you really believe God owns everything, then it isn't just the tithe, it isn't just what you're giving, it's everything you have belongs to him. And so when you're making decisions about what to spend in those categories, okay, we spend money on our lifestyle, on food and shelter and cars and vacations and all those things. God owns that money too. Those are all spiritual decisions, because we're supposed to provide for our family, and we're supposed to set aside money for the future, and we're supposed to pay our debts. Those are all spiritual decisions. So I had an example of a stewardship example. Over my career, I've been executor of estates and trustee many times. It's been part of my job, and it's a unique role. I'm just going to describe briefly one example I had of when I was a trustee. This is many years ago. There's an elderly woman in a nursing home here in Moses Lake, actually, not able to care for herself. and her assets were in a trust. And the previous trustee, unfortunately, was stealing money from that trust, and the court appointed me as trustee for her to take care of her in that nursing home, pay her bills, manage her investments. Yeah, actually even come over and help make medical decisions for her. And I was in that role for about 3 years. So I never owned those. I was a steward. I was a manager. I didn't own the money. I never was going to own it, but I was very accountable for it. And I had to account to her children as to what I was doing with that money. And I had to pay her bills and just, again, act as a manager or a student or a steward. Never took ownership of it. And when she was in that nursing home for about 3 years, and when she passed away, my role was to distribute that money and account to her 2 children for everything I had done while I was the trustee. That's a steward. That's what a steward is. And it's really the same thing that we do with our own money. When you think about it, an owner has rights, but a steward only has responsibilities. And so there I was for those 3 years. I had responsibilities for that money to take and for her. But I never took ownership. And I was held accountable when it was all over. To me, that's kind of a picture of our role with our own, with our own money. So I think the role of being a steward of our money is an indication of, if we're good stewards, that's an indication of success. I think part of being successful is understanding that there's 2 sides of the financial coin. And one is what we call it offense. It's your ability to bring money into a household. A lot of times when we have financial problems, we're always looking at our spending, and we need to look there. But sometimes the issue is actually, what are we doing in terms of our work? Are we excellent? Are we excellent at our work? Did we pick a career that combines, that we have the passion for, that we have the gifts and the talents, and it provides the kind of financial rewards that our family needs? I talk to so many people who really don't like their jobs. They really feel like they're stuck in it. I used to tell people, when I was really young, I would have loved to have been, I wanted to be the center fielder for the Yankees. And I had passion for it, and I knew it would give me the financial rewards that I was looking for. I was really short on the gifts and talent side. It was never gonna happen. We need all 3. I think as we look at our own children, as we're raising them, to think about this a lot, that as they're trying to, one of their 4 most important decisions, their career, that who knows our kids better than ourselves, and we understand their passions and their gifts and all those, and we can help them and kind of move them, subtly in the right directions. But anyway, the offensive side is important. And a lot of times I'll be involved in a family's finances, and even if they're managing their money very well, they're just, what can we do to get more money, in? And then there's the spending side and the management side, and that's the defense side. And defense, I think about your basketball team back in college, John. When you're playing good defense, this takes time, it takes intentionality, it takes monitoring, constant adjustments, communication, goal setting, planning, tracking. Playing good defense with your money, just like in basketball, requires all of those things. And so we want to have good offense, and we want to have a really fine defense too. Most people spend more time, frankly, planning their next vacation than they do about thinking about their financial future. Actually applying, it's just our culture. We live in a culture of consumers, and it's really hard not to fall into that, sort of trap. Anyway, I think successful people understand both sides of the financial coin. And I think they understand that they have a money personality. We all have a money personality, and we got it just like our regular, it started forming when we were kids. And there's 3 dimensions of your financial personality: the earning side, the management side, and the spending side. 3 dimensions of your personality. And within each dimension, there's an unhealthy extremes, and then there's a healthy middle. For example, John, let me ask you this question. Those 3 dimensions, let's say spending, let's just say spending. On the one extreme would be kind of the miserly penny pincher. And on the other side would be sort of the the overspender, and the, maybe not quite paying as much attention. Now, would you and Charlene be different in that dimension?
Yeah, yeah, and so especially early in our marriage, I was definitely on the spender side. She was definitely on the saver side. Luckily, over the years, I've been able to coax her to my side, so now we're both spenders. It's, it's as as you used to say at board meetings about a million times, Rick. The bad news is last month we didn't have as much income as we needed. The good news is the staff is keeping up on the spending side. So yeah, yeah, no, but it really is.
Oh, yeah, we do have a money personality, and I think it's important to recognize that we do, and that your spouse is probably going to have a different personality. That doesn't make him or her wrong. We come at it from different perspectives, and I think it's really important that we do have a personality, and just because it's our personality doesn't make it always right.
Yeah.
And we can actually move to unhealthy sides of each one of those in terms of those three dimensions. So.
Yeah, Rick, can I just say just one more thing about that topic? One of the things that's interesting is to think about what you mentioned earlier. One of the things that's significant about the way we manage money is that our kids watch us.
Absolutely.
In my being raised, I don't think I ever saw my parents ever manage money, not ever. Charlotte, on the other side of it, her parents were very frugal, very, very specific about, they used the Larry Burkett system of envelopes. Charlotte's mom still uses that if she can. She doesn't manage that much of her money right now, but that issue of like how we viewed money very much came from our family of origin and like what we saw at home.
Yeah, big deal. I think successful people have mentors and advisors. I think it's really, really important. In my time, these last 45 years, I don't know if I'm making this up. It just seems like I see less of that. I see less of the development and the seeking of advisors and mentors. And if we don't have them, then the only voice we're listening to is our own. And how's that working out? I don't think it really is important. The Bible's it's everywhere in there that we are to seek out that there's strength in having mentors and advisors. And I don't mean your broke brother-in-law. We gotta find wisdom and seek it out. And that one thing about living in this community for all these years, Patty and I have had such wonderful mentors, whether it's raising our kids, in marriage, sort of role models for us in marriage, definitely in finances. It's really been an incredible thing. You remember the book?
Excuse me, Rick.
Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Excuse me, Rick. Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
So, from a purely practical perspective, can you give any guidance as to how somebody can go about finding that mentor, finding that advisor?
Well, because
just like you don't want it to be your broke brother-in-law, maybe the guy you meet in the church parking lot might not be the best choice either, or the guy at the hardware store, or even the first professional you talk to. How do you choose the best fit?
Yeah, first of all, there's so much resource out there now in terms of reading and that kind of thing. So I mean, some of this is not in person, but a lot of it is. And it's not like we went out there with the idea I need to find a mentor, but we were surrounded by folks definitely within the church. But I had an advantage. I was in a business where, of course, I was able to kind of view firsthand, and people that I could see were, had wisdom in a particular area. I'm not a real outgoing guy, but I actually didn't hesitate going up and saying, can we talk about this? Can you sit down with me and can you spend some time with me and talk about certain things? I never had anybody turn me down. It was always, most people are pretty receptive to answering questions where they might have areas of expertise and such. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. I was spoiled. I was surrounded by folks who, I could communicate about their finances, but there within our church there are, within the community. If we were so active in the community that it was never an issue for us. We actually, the effort we made wasn't to find mentors. It was actually, we wanted to be connected in the community. And we did. And I don't know if that's a great answer, but
No, that's a great answer. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking, Rick, and I appreciate that question, Bruce. It's nice to see you. One of the questions that or one of the things I was thinking about as you said that, as you were talking about mentors, it's been interesting as we kind of walk through this pandemic, like even how do we manage, how do we sort of go through it? One of the things that I really have tried to do is to find, in the midst of these moments, find people that I think are objective, who really do care about me, who are not politically or otherwise motivated. I always think that that's been helpful for me, because I have also sought out mentors. Rick certainly has been one of them, but other people. And those are questions that I've asked myself, like, who do I think has knowledge here, who genuinely cares about me, who's not politically or otherwise motivated, that I can trust. And I agree with Rick, what you said, Rick. I have rarely approached someone and said, hey, I need help on this, and had them say, yeah, I'm too busy, I'm not interested. So that's a great question, though, about mentoring. Rick, you gave me a book a few years ago. Do you remember the title of it? It was about, or maybe there was a chapter in this book about how to find counselors, wise counselors. Do you remember that book?
I don't off the top of my head, John.
Okay. I don't remember it either, but yeah.
Can I add something there, Rick? Is that okay?
I hope you do. Yes.
I think one of the things that we found was helpful was looking at someone else's life and their lifestyle, and whether it was to say they're doing a really good job and that's what we need to learn from, or to say, they're doing a lousy job. How can we not end up like that? And both of those actually were equally helpful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That's really helpful. Rick, are there other important attributes of successful financial management? Maybe just that you
just a couple of things real briefly, John. I think these are really important. Remember a few years ago, the book what was called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, something like that.
Yep.
And one of those habits was to begin with the end in mind. In other words, you have a picture in your mind of what, before you start on something, you have a picture in your mind of what this is going to look like. So when you're 30, you want a vision in your mind of what not tomorrow looks like. That's important, but what 10 years from now, what 20, because the things we can do today, it's like raising your kids. What are you doing today so that 20 years from now they are young men and women of integrity and honesty, and they love the Lord, and they make good decisions, they have character. What do you do today that affects down the road? And it's the same thing with money. We begin with the end in mind. What do we do today and this year that's going to affect down the road? I think that's just, successful people do that. They're not just caught up in the day. They're thinking down the road. So anyway, that's, I think, and they have discipline about moving towards it. And they just do. They're disciplined folks. Yeah. You just see that Tommy Lasorda died last week. Maybe you're not into baseball, but Tommy Lasorda died. And as I was reading about his life, I came upon this quote, which I think applies to money. He said in his managerial life, there was 3 kinds of baseball players: those that make it happen, those that watch it happen, and those that wonder what just happened. And it's the same thing with money. You've got to be purposeful. You take an active role. You're not passive. You're not watching this happen. You don't get to the end of the month and say, well, hey, I wonder where that money went. It's more disciplined than that. It's more purposeful than that. So anyway, those kind of attributes are really important in being successful with money.
Yeah, it's good. Anyone else have a question before we move on to the next question I want to ask? Just have to unmute yourself and dive in. Okay, what about some rules of thumb? Just financial management, financial rules of thumb, Rick. What are some key principles?
Okay, remember what a rule of thumb is now. These aren't absolute principles. They are rules of thumb, and they are kind of intended to be sort of guides. The first one I want to mention actually isn't a rule of thumb. It's kind of a tool, and maybe some of you heard of it. It's called the rule of 72. Have you heard of the rule of 72? If you take your anticipated rate of return, if you take your anticipated earnings rate and you divide it into 72, that will tell you how long it will be until the money doubles. So, for example, if I'm going to get a 6% return on something, 6 goes into 72. How many times, Nate?
12.
So it will take 12. I had to get you involved. Sorry.
I'm so glad you showed up, Nathan. We would have not been able to figure that out. I
wanted to hear from him. So that money will double in 12 years. If you get a 6% return, the money will double in 12 years. If you get a 9% return, it'll double in 8 years. Okay. If you get a 10% return, it'll double in a little over 7 years. Understand? I found that a really helpful tool in terms of saving for the future and setting aside money for the future. So for example, if at age 25, I invested $10,000. I can't remember what interest rate. I think I may have used, I used 10% on this because the math works. So if I invest $10,000 at age 25 and if I can get a 10% return, which you think, okay, that's crazy, nobody gets a 10% return. That's actually the average rate of return on the S&P 500 for the last 75 years. But anyway, at age 25, $10,000. So that means at age 32, it'll be $20,000. At age 39, it'll be $40,000. At age 46, it'll be $80,000. At age 53, it'll be $160,000. At age 60, it'll be $320,000. At age 67, it'll be $640,000. Who wouldn't want $640,000 at age 67, about the time you're ready to retire? This is powerful. This is powerful. Compound interest is powerful. A little bit set aside early enough. Anyway, the rule of 72. It works on anything. It works on population. If Moses Lake was growing at a rate of 4% a year, we'll double in population in 18 years because 4 goes into 72 18 times. It works on various things. Anyway, I found it to be helpful over the years. Okay, here's another rule of thumb. When purchasing a home, put 20% down to avoid private mortgage insurance. If you can't save 20%, never buy a home less than 10. This is a Ramsey principle. Of course, with the idea being that we think housing all goes up, but anybody that was alive in 2008 knows that it doesn't always go up. And we're trying to not have such a large mortgage payment that it crowds out everything else you're doing in your life. Limit your house payment, that's principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and PMI, to no more than 25% of your take-home pay. 25% of your take-home pay. Most people don't do that. But if you get over that, again, it's going to rob from these other categories. It's going to rob from your lifestyle, or it's going to create more debt, or you're not going to be able to save for the future. Really important. Don't borrow money to go to a college you can't afford. We have a student loan debt crisis in our country. Always a 15-year fixed rate mortgage. Always a 15-year fixed rate mortgage. The value of your, yes?
Question from Marco and I real quick. You said about doing 25% of your net pay for mortgage, or no more than that.
Yes.
So, I mean, with the way the housing is now and stuff, you can't, like, there's no way, I don't think you could even buy a house for that, or rent. I mean, in our situation anyways, I don't know other people's.
Yeah,
so,
yes, I understand.
What would you recommend at that point? I mean,
well, we're going to go through a practical step-by-step on that, but
okay.
What you have to realize is if you get much over that percentage, then these other categories that are really important, the Bible teaches are really important, like sharing with others and reducing and not having debt and being able to save for the future. If you get much over that 25%, there's just not going to be enough there. If you see what I mean, it's going to squeeze you. and maybe you're already feeling that squeeze,
Mhm.
and becomes paycheck to paycheck. So it's kind of throws up a red flag
Okay.
for you. And so then if we were to sit down and talk about it, we would look at your offense. We'd see the income that you're bringing into the household, and is there anything we can do with that? And we would look at other things you're spending on. But I think, again, it's a rule of thumb. So it throws up the warning sign.
Okay.
If my monthly mortgage or my rent payment gets much over this, we're going to be squeezed, and this will not work long term. We got to figure this out.
Okay.
That's really what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The value of all your vehicles, including boats and RVs, should never exceed 50% of your annual income. This is another Ramsey rule. I know you're all doing what's my car's worth and all that. You're going, but you see this a lot. You see a lot of toys in the front yard and all that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, all those things don't go down in value. A car will go down in value maybe 60% in the first 5 years. So if you're investing a very significant amount of your income in stuff that's going down in value like that, it's going to pinch you financially. Never borrow money on things that go down in value. So when you go out to dinner tonight and pay that with your credit card and then carry that balance over 3 months, that's probably a bad idea. Remember Jeff Foxworthy? He said something like, if you finance a tattoo, you must be a redneck. 3 more payments and she's all mine.
Jeff Foxworthy was a financial advisor for which company? I don't remember.
He said sophisticated people have 401ks. Rednecks play the lottery. Never co-sign a loan. Never borrow from your 401k. Don't be going without life insurance when you have small kids and debts. Don't say it's impossible to save. Latte breath. Always have a current will. Always have a current will. A friend of ours passed away just a few weeks ago without a will, and it just causes real problems for the heirs. Anyway, those are some rules of thumb. Any question on any of those? I just want to take a few minutes, John, if we could. Can we just take a minute, because we're coming up. Where are we? Coming up on an hour. I want to spend just a few minutes on the Ramsey baby steps. That'd be okay?
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about principles here, and they're really important, but this gets a little bit more practical. And you're probably all familiar with Ramsey's not the only guy out there, and this isn't the only path to financial sort of freedom. But I can tell you it does work. It does work. So if you find yourself sort of in a, you're in a season of life where things are really tight, maybe you've got too much debt, things are really tight, I encourage you to think about these baby steps. The first baby step is save $1,000 for your emergency fund. $1,000. Now, some people would say, gosh, $1,000. I mean, that's a lot of money, and it is. The way Ramsey described me, he said, hey, if you had a child that needed a surgery to live, and you had to raise $1,000 to get that surgery, I bet you'd have it by next week. Somehow you would get it. This is the same kind of thing. Let's get $1,000 in our emergency fund right out of the bat. So if something happens, we're not going to live on that credit card. We have something to fall back on. And step 2 is we pay off all the debt except the home. All the debt except the home. So that means credit cards and car loans and student loans. That is baby step number 2. Okay. Now, for some people, that's a big deal. And what he suggests is you list those debts in increasing order, the smallest first. You list them in increasing order. And you make minimum payments on all of them except the first one, the smallest one. I don't care about the interest rates, it's the smallest one. And you throw everything you can at that payment. So let's say that first payment was a $100 minimum payment, but you could scrape together and you're going to throw $300 at it. So it goes $300 a month until that thing is paid off. And when that one's paid off, you take the $300 you were throwing at the first one, plus the minimum payment on the second one, and you start throwing that at the second debt. Everybody with me? So now we're paying the payment we were paying on the first debt, the smallest debt, and now we're taking the payment that we're paying on the second debt, we're combining them, and we're paying out the second debt till it's gone. Then we're taking the total of those payments and adding it to the third debt until it's gone, and so on. That's called the debt snowball. He says that on average, this is on average, people that come to the Ramsey group takes about 2 years to get, on the average. Yours might be faster, yours might be, on average, it takes 2 years to get that personal debt taken care of, okay? Once that debt's gone, and we're talking about the car loans, the student loans, the credit cards, personal debt, not the mortgage. Once that debt's gone, we take the money that we're throwing at the debt and we start to fully fund our emergency fund. And our emergency fund is going to be somewhere between 3 and 6 months of your spending. Okay, 3 to 6 months. Now that's quite a gap. But it'd be closer to 3 months if your jobs are very stable. The odds of unemployment are very low. It would be closer to 6 months if, let's say, you're in construction or something that much more volatile. So the more volatile and risky your work is, the higher the emergency fund. But once you get through those first 3 steps, those first 3 steps are tough. They are tough. He calls them beans and rice. He said, the only time if you're in steps 1 through 3, the only time I want to see you in a restaurant is if you're working there. Okay, we're not taking vacations. We're not going out to eat. We're going through it. We're going to have really discipline. We're going to get through these first, because once we're through them, everything is different. We don't have any debt except our mortgage. We have our reserve, we have our emergency fund, and now things look very different for us in terms of the margin we have in our life. We're getting our life back in terms of the pressure that we've been under. Okay, then the next step, step 4, is we start to set aside 15% of our income for retirement. 15%. Step 5, once we've got that 15% going in, now we start to think about our kids' college fund. Then the next step is to pay off that house early, if we can. And then finally, when we're done with the house, we live and give. We build wealth, and we have the money to share. So those are the steps. Those are the baby steps that you may have all heard about. Those first 3 are they're challenging, but the freedom really happens after that. And to deal with that question I had earlier, what he suggests is you get through steps 1, 2, and 3 before you buy a home. We don't always do that, but anyway, that's the baby steps.
So that would be in the category of where to start. I mean,
Start with $1,000. The reason I like it is because it's defined, and it works. That doesn't make it easy, but it does work. It does work. And the freedom you get after step 3, oh my goodness, it's really a big deal. Really a big deal.
Yeah, one of the things, Rick, that I wanted to bring up, I've had a couple of different financial advisors with Edward Jones over the last few years. And one of the financial advisors I had, whenever I had to go see him, I hated it, because he was going to remind me every time that I didn't start early enough. And I remember thinking, oh, geez, it's my yearly review. I got to go in, and that guy's going to look at me and say, dude, you're not going to make it. and that's okay. I still went, but he got tired of me and he pushed me off onto someone else. And the guy he's pushed me off onto, I like a lot. I look forward to meeting with him. And one of the reasons is because when I go in and sit down with him, he says, hey, this is where you are. Let's not worry about that. Let's just talk about where to go from here. And yeah. I've loved that, because we've we've made a lot of progress in the last few years on that. I have all of my tax returns from the summer of my 7th grade year. I made more my first year out of high school working for the BLM than I made my first year at Moses Lake Christian Church. So, when you look at those things, it just reminds me of like, where do you start? And that kind of that thing about planting a tree, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. The next best time to plant a tree is right now.
Today.
Yeah. And so I want to say that to us, because who knows? I mean, I don't know where all of us are on the spectrum of life as I, look at your pictures on the screen and we hear this conversation, but sometimes the financial conversation can be really discouraging because you feel like I'm not going to be prepared. I'm not going to make it. But the reality is today's a good day to start whatever your next step is. So I appreciate those Ramsey steps. I wanted to say this about that too. Dave Ramsey does have a website that has a lot of interactive tools that you can use for free. If you're a Dave Ramsey guy or a person, that stuff's out there. So and there's some stuff that you can subscribe to, of course, as well, because he's still in the business of making money. But there's a lot of good material out there.
There is. Absolutely, John. I wanted to say that some of this, I think, getting your financial act in order, it does require some financial literacy. It does require, finances has its own language. Fortunately, Ramsey says this, and I believe it's true, getting your financial life in kind of in order and on the right path, it's 80% behavior. You do not have to be a financial whiz to do that. It's really mostly a behavioral thing, establishing new habits, a new attitude, and moving forward. It truly is. You don't have to be Warren Buffett here. We got to get on a different path. And the other thing I was going to mention is that when you think about the Ramsey steps, if we can get through, especially if we can get through those first three, if we can get rid of our consumer debt and our student debt, I like the saying, in terms of how you approach your money, we all live on a percentage of our income, don't we? None of us, we don't even bring home 100% of our income. Things are taken out of our check. All of us live on a percentage of what we earn. All of us do. All of us do. We really have to decide what percentage of our income we're going to live on, and how much is going to go to the other four categories. You know what I'm saying? In other words, I run so many families. Everybody does this. If you have kids at home and you're making $50,000 a year, then you spend it. If 10 years later, those kids are still home and you're making $100,000 a year, you're still paycheck to paycheck because your lifestyle has expanded to meet your income. It's just human nature. It just happens unless you're purposeful and decide as a couple, what percentage of our income are we going to live on? That's why we track spending. So we know what that looks like. Are you a $50,000 a year family? Are you a $60,000? What are you? Because then later on, as incomes go up, it creates margin. But anyway, out of that comes, and this is an Andy Stanley thing, but I like it, just the overall approach towards our spending. We give, we save, and then we live. We give, we save, and then we live. And now, obviously, the Bible tells us the debtor is a slave to the lender. I mean, it's really true. We have to deal with that. But if we can deal with those first three steps, and then we give, we save, and then we live, to me, that's powerful. It's a powerful thing. And you're right, John. The earlier you start on that, on setting aside money for the future, the better. But wherever you are, it's time. It's good to start. It's good to start.
Okay. How do you get? I mean, practically, like, do you have tips to get past the shame? Because like all of us have done stupid things, and absolutely. John, you're kind of mentioning like, okay, yeah, it's best to do it 20 years ago, but do it now. But emotionally, like, I don't know the discipline to just start now. Do you have any tips to like get past the shame, get past the hurdle?
You talk about kind of an internal thing,
yeah, kind of
an avoidance thing. Hey, it's gone so long now. I'm just gonna, I think Nathan's. Boy, you're right. We've all made mistakes on this, absolutely, and past the shame. what I found personally is that there's so much when you establish that new habit of saving, and you can see that, and you can see what's going on. I think initially probably that's true, especially like John's experience going to somebody and, okay, here's where I am. What can I do? What's the deal? I don't know. I don't really have an answer other than we're called to do that. I think we are. I think we have to. I think we have to.
I think I can answer this question, Rick. So, for me and my wife and I, we did go through the Dave Ramsey plan, and it's been great for us. And I think to answer your question, we just kind of stopped looking at our past habits, and it was a collective effort to establish what goals we have and establish our budget together. And from that point on, it was just looking forward. So we really weren't looking in the past and all the shame that, like our bad habit that we had, but it was just, focused on the future and doing it together. So that's, from my experience, that's what it was like for us.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. I think of, John, you and I've talked about this before, but we all have this picture in our mind of kind of what our life should, it's like a motion picture that runs in our mind all the time of what our life should look like, what our children should look like, and what our financial life should look like, and what our marriage should look like. And it, we often compare this motion picture that's always running in our mind of what this should look like against what it does look like. And that gap between sort of the ideal and where we are create what Nathan said. It almost creates shame. It's like, okay, what is the deal here? But just like what Curtis said, really, we can get satisfaction out of making progress instead of comparing it to the ideal. We said, yeah, but here's where I was last year, and here's the progress I've made now, and here's the goals. The book that was written, 25 years ago now, it's called The Millionaire Next Door, and it was a study of the people in the country that achieved $1 million net worth, and how they did it. And it was called The Millionaire Next Door because these were not the people that were living in the big houses with the big cars and the big stuff. Those people were actually in debt. That was, in Texas, they're called big hat, no cattle. It was like, okay, we got, there's lots of stuff there, but there really isn't any equity there. The people that were actually financially successful had done it mostly with defense over a long period of time. Just, it's get rich slow kind of an approach. And it's always comparing where you are today, not to the ideal, because that'll get you motivated, but have we made progress? Are we doing better?
Yeah.
How are we doing on this road?
Yeah.
And the shame turns to actually satisfaction and excitement about moving towards a goal.
Yeah.
Can I add too?
Yeah, please.
I was going to say that I think it's a little bit like when you're deciding whether or not you're going to follow God. At first you think, I am so unworthy. And of course, we all are. And yet once we make that decision to do that, to follow God, how much better our lives are. And it's kind of the same thing, I think, with making your financial decisions. Once you decide to do that, the past is just kind of erased and you just move forward.
Yeah, I think one of the things, Patty, just as you're talking about that, and Nathan, as you asked that question, I love that question about shame, because shame is massive in our culture. Shame is big in the church. And when I was talking about going to the financial advisor, who would say every time I went to him, well, you're not making it. You didn't start early enough. One of the reasons I hated going there was because I felt like an idiot when I went, and I knew I kind of was an idiot. The thing that's different about going to the other person that I go to now is when I go in there, he says, hey, let's not worry about what we haven't done right. Let's just move on from here. There's a part of, I wonder how much of getting past that means becoming a part of a community where honestly you can be real about who you are, and that it takes finding, Rick, you started with that, right? The people you become friends with. who are the people around you that can help you, who, realistically you can trust and you can be honest with, and aren't going to look at you and say, wow, you really should have done this better 20 years ago. Yep, I should have, but I didn't. So here I am today. Now, how do we go from here? So I think that community is a really big piece of it too.
One thing that occurs to me too, John, as you were talking about that, I think back to this book from 25 years ago called Millionaire Next Door. The most prominent item that set apart those that had achieved some level of financial success and independence from those that didn't, this sounds silly, but it's true, was goal setting. They set goals. So husband and wife, they set goals for the future, short-term and long-term goals. And not like most of us, okay, we got a goal and then we kind of shelve that. We don't think about it much. They actually set the goals and then they monitored their progress towards the accomplishment of those goals, both short-term and long-term. That was the single biggest difference between those that achieved some level of financial security and those people that hadn't. That sounds weird. And I don't remember the statistics, but there's some statistics around that. Setting a goal in your mind, the chances of achieving it are almost zero, but you write it down and the odds of achieving it are much greater. If you'll tell somebody, you thought of the goal, you wrote it down, you told somebody about it, the odds of achieving go up even further. If you think of it, write it down, tell somebody, and then ask them to hold you accountable for achieving it, now it's off the charts in terms of accomplishment, because there's an accountability piece to it. And so the goal setting thing is really powerful over time. And you have a picture of, okay, this is where I want to be. This is where I want my investments to be. This is, okay, whatever it is. The goal set, don't overlook the goal setting phase. That requires communication between husband and wife and all those things. That's for sure. But don't overlook that. It's powerful.
Yeah, when we started, I talked about the book that I just finished reading from Patrick Lencioni titled The Three Big Questions for Frantic Families. One of the things he talks about in there is what's your rallying cry as a family? What is the thing you want to do? And as we've been starting this year off, kind of talking about vision at MLCC, the thing that strikes me is, again, the proverb that where there is no vision, the people are unrestrained. If you don't have an idea of where you're headed, you'll go anywhere. If you don't know where you want to spend or what your goals are, you'll just spend it wherever it happens to move you at the moment. So that gets back to that piece, I think, too, Rick. Listen, it's 8:13, and so here's what I want to do. I'm happy to hang around. If you want to hang around, sounds like Rick could hang around. I do want to be really faithful to the time, and so I want to just say that we're going to kind of wrap up here, but I'm going to hang on. You want to hang around and ask Rick some questions, and we can talk a little bit about other things. I know Devin's very interested in when he should sell his Tesla stock, so we'll want to get into that. Maybe Nathan would want to weigh in on that. Anyway, thank you all for being here. I'm going to sort of just give us this benediction here, and then if you want to go, feel free, and if you want to hang on, feel free. I got nothing else to do. And so I'll hang around for a while. So thanks for showing up. Rick, thank you for your time. You have been, for me personally, a wealth of wisdom and friendship over the years. I'm really grateful for that. And also just grateful for what you have to talk about here tonight. And, money really does matter to all of us. And we all have to deal with it. We all have to manage it. We all have to take care of it. So thank you for your time, Rick. To each of you that are here tonight, thanks for showing up and being a part of this conversation. And hopefully it's been helpful to you. And Rick, I guess I want to say, if people would like to get a hold of you, are you open to that? If somebody would send me I could give them your email address, or, there may be some questions that have come up. Are you okay with that?
Of course.
Via email or something. Yeah. So yeah, if you have further questions, then we kind of taken a 30,000 foot look this evening, and that's cool. That's kind of what these Zoom conferences have been about. And so if you want to follow back to our other ones, or if you want to look at this one, it'll be recorded. It'll be up on our virtual campus. So we invite you to take a look at that. So If you got to go, blessings to you as you go. And I, just pray that this has been helpful and encouraging to you, and that it'll make a difference in how you go forward. So God bless, and take care if you're taking